What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we are checking out the JMGO Ultra Short Throw Projector. Now, ultra short throw projectors usually tend to be big, bulky, and very expensive, $2,000 or $3,000 to start. But this one, the JMGO 01, is small, compact, and the best part is it comes in at just $649. Easily the cheapest projector of its kind that I've seen. But at that price point, you're still getting something really solid. This is an all-in-one, easy-to-use plug-and-play projector. You can prop it up just about anywhere to get a 100-inch screen. It's got the built-in streaming apps, a booming speaker setup, and I think this thing might just be the perfect addition to my own bedroom, which you guys know I sort of use as a movie theater. There's a lot to talk about here, but to kick things off, let me just quickly show you the unboxing experience and explain the setup process, and then we'll get into just how good this projector really is. And a big shout out to the folks at JMGO for sending this projector over and for sponsoring this video. So inside the very classy packaging, you get everything you need and then some to quickly set up the projector and start watching your favorite shows or movies within a matter of minutes. The first thing you'll see right on top is a big thick book of instructions, but don't be put off by that. It's just the same instructions translated into a ton of different languages. Beneath that is the projector itself, and like I alluded to already, this thing is tiny, at least compared to most other UST projectors, and I don't necessarily want to call it portable, but you could easily pick this up and move it to wherever you need. There's one more box of stuff included here. You get a power supply and power cable, which you'll of course need to boot up the projector, and you also get a dedicated remote, a nice one at that. This is a pretty decent little clicker, and I'll demo it in just a bit. So with all that stuff out of the way, here is the projector itself once again, the JMGO 01, and right off the bat, the first thing that stood out to me was the design. You get this sort of futuristic looking thing that I really don't mind displaying out on my dresser or living room TV stand. It's a metal and aluminum construction, sort of gives off a more premium vibe, and it takes up no space at all. It's barely 12 inches across, maybe 8 or 9 inches deep, a couple inches tall, and it's very lightweight. Obviously, I can just hold this projector up with one hand, so if you wanted to move this from room to room, take it to an event, a camping trip, a picnic, whatever, you totally could. Underneath are a few rubber feet to keep it from sliding around, and there's also an additional mounting point if you want to ceiling mount it or set it up on a dedicated stand, but you'll see in a second that I keep things simple with it just resting on my dresser. And you'll also notice speaker grills and exhaust grills all around too. I'll let you know now that not only is this thing very quiet, but the built-in speakers here are really great too, and I'll give you a whole sound test here in just a bit. Setup is super straightforward. All you really need to do is connect up the power supply and power plug together, and then plug the projector itself in, obviously using the DC power port around back. And as far as all those other ports and inputs, well, you definitely get a lot. There's a dedicated LAN port, optical, 2 USB ports, HDMI ARC, and one more HDMI for good measure. With all those options, you could connect up something like an Amazon Fire TV stick if you wanted, or an Apple TV, or a cable box, even a USB drive, or a smartphone, or a laptop. There's a ton of options for getting your content shown, but really you don't have to connect up any additional things if you don't want to, because you're actually able to install all your favorite streaming apps right onto the projector itself. Now, as far as positioning and getting the right screen set up, the JMGO can produce up to a 100-inch screen from about 14 inches away from the wall. If you don't have that much space to work with, even 6 or 7 inches of distance can still yield you a 70 or 80 inch screen, which is impressive. And honestly, compared to a TV that size, this is cheaper, it's easier to set up, and way more practical. For the most part, once the projector is positioned on the table, the stand, the dresser, whatever you're using, and you power it on, it'll actually automatically adjust on its own, the angle and keystone and all that jazz to get you set up with the properly configured screen. And anytime you move the projector around again, it'll continually readjust to maximize the projection and ensure that everything is straight. When you power on the projector for the very first time, you'll be asked to connect to Wi-Fi, and then you're presented with a basic sort of user interface that's essentially a skinned Android TV experience. Jumping into the settings to start, there's plenty of additional options and things you can mess around with if the auto adjustments didn't do a good enough job with the screen calibration or other initial setup things. You can change everything from the brightness level to the blue light modes, manual keystone adjustments, color profiles, autofocus, zoom, HDR, noise reduction. There's an endless amount of tweaks here to get the image just right. But honestly, for me, aside from a minor keystone correction, I really didn't feel the need to change much. Now, just quickly jumping back to the remote, this thing is very easy to use, and like I mentioned already, it's a surprisingly nice one too to have included. There's directional buttons, forward and back, menu, volume controls, and even a focus adjuster, which are a couple additional side-mounted buttons on the remote. It's a great tool and pairs nicely with this projector, but JMGO also has an app you can utilize to basically make your smartphone the remote instead. This is an even better option because not only can you have the standard remote button layout, but you can even use it like a trackpad with an on-screen mouse, which is sometimes quicker and more accurate when selecting on-screen items. So I definitely like having the app here too. I think the most convenient thing about the JMGO projector is the fact that you have the ability to install many of the streaming apps and services you're likely familiar with right to the projector itself. Everything from Netflix to Prime Video to Disney Plus, HBO, YouTube, and a whole lot more. It's all right there ready to go. I tried out Netflix almost immediately and the app installed quickly and I was ready to start watching in no time. Now, to be totally honest, the Netflix app, for example, isn't seamlessly made for this specific projector and sometimes is a little finicky with navigating. So I'd recommend still having a Fire TV stick plugged into this thing, but if you want to keep things simple, being able to download and install whatever streaming apps you like right onto the projector itself is a great option to have anyway. So let's dive into all the important bits now. The JMGO 01 is an LED projector that peaks at about 800 lumens of brightness. Unfortunately, that means that daytime viewing isn't necessarily possible, but even in a dimly lit room with a light on, like I have here, you can see this projector is easily viewable. And when the lights go all the way down, I think this thing is plenty bright enough to say the least. In fact, you guys know my bedroom is the furthest thing from blacked out. The city lights shine pretty brightly, but I have no complaints with the picture this projector still produces, even with that factor in play. The JMGO supports a native 1080p resolution, and you'll have to ignore the texture on my wall that's sort of distorting things a bit. I think this projector is plenty sharp. Obviously, you're going to be watching it from a few feet away, and even at this size, from the right viewing distance, I don't have any complaints. With a 5000:1 contrast ratio, colors look fairly vibrant here too, and overall, I think this thing exceeded my expectations with the image it produces. This is absolutely that sort of immersive home theater setup you'd want, and I think specifically for a kind of budget UST projector, this thing really doesn't fall short with anything in particular. That also extends to the sound too, and there's two elements here. First off, the general fan noise this projector produces really isn't much at all. It's very quiet, almost silent compared to like a regular lamp projector, and you might be able to pick out the light hum here in the sound sample, but most of what you're listening to is actually the ambient noise of the highway outside my window. So fan noise, humming is really not an issue. And the built-in speakers for the out loud listening experience are really quite good too. There's two speakers inside this projector, one on each side. JMGO partnered with a company called Dyn Audio, and whatever they did, they delivered a pretty booming speaker setup that really fills the room.
He won by hate on the bumper.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
Now obviously, it isn't that surround sound theater experience, but for what it is, it's really quite good. And if you want something better, you can of course pair this projector up with your own soundbar or speaker setup too, to take it to another level. All in all, I think it's easy to dismiss something like the JMGO O2 as a sort of cheaper alternative to a genuinely good high-priced UST projector setup. But spending $2,000 or $3,000 is really kind of tough, and this, I think, is a good option in its own right for a fraction of the cost. It's smaller and more convenient than some of the behemoth UST setups out there. It produces a really big screen with a nice image, the built-in speakers are better than expected, and it's super easy to set up and start watching anything and everything you might want. It's just a really convenient, really well-rounded, easy to use projector that I think opens the door for a lot of other people to finally make the move towards a nicer UST home theater setup, and I can't recommend this thing enough. So there you go, those are all my thoughts on the JMGO O2 projector. What do you guys think? Is this something you'd like to have in your home? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.